On this episode of Second Swing Thoughts, we have two quick interviews. We got one, of course, on Michael Brennan's equipment with Harrison Arnold. And then also we have a couple of fitters coming in, Jake and Harrison, talking about spin and how it can play a major factor into club fitting. So that and a lot more in this episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Hey golfers, I'm Drew Mahol of Second Swing Golf. Sean Bauer, co-host of the show over there. Sean, we got a fun one. We got a couple interviews today. We got Harrison Arnold actually in for both of them. So a heavy dose of Harrison today, talking about the equipment from Michael Brennan. And then, of course, he and Jake, they get their fitting, discussion, if you will. It's always fun to hear them go back and forth about club fitting, specifically on spin.
Yeah. Great to have you back in the chair. I was sitting in your chair last week. So
yeah, of course.
So hopefully you had a good golf trip there. But yeah, Harrison, for those who tuned in last week, we kind of introduced him and went through, kind of the clubs he plays. He's a phenomenal golfer.
Yes.
And obviously a fitter here at Second Swing as well. So he has a very unique outlook on equipment just because he plays a lot of the same equipment, but he's played with a lot of top-level players, kind of understands their thought process, but then he also has been on the other side of it where he's been fitting people into equipment. So he brings great insights. So both segments with him, you're really going to enjoy. And, of course, Jake Montgomery, our fitting manager over at the Minneapolis store. He's always fantastic as well. So two really good discussions, all equipment and fitting focused. So I think you're all going to really enjoy that. So stay tuned for that. But let's get right into the turn. And we're going to go with, PGA Tour, Bank of Utah Championship, just the second year they've had it. And Michael Brennan, 23-year-old in his third career PGA Tour start, comes up with his first career win, and he was actually in on a sponsor's invite. So pretty remarkable accomplishment for, I think, a guy who we might just, from watching him golf, we might hear his name quite a bit.
This is just the beginning for him, and I think it's cool to highlight and discuss how good some of these guys in these lower tours, PGA Tour Americas or Canada or wherever, there's a ton of really, really good players out there that can get hot, can find their game, and obviously that at the highest level, it translates, and they can compete with these guys that are on the PGA Tour and do have their tour cards. So really fun to see that. And again, this is a really good, perfect use to me of a sponsor's exemption. I know it's a controversial thing out there and what matters more versus getting the tournament out there in terms of exposure and getting the big name in there. But here's a guy who had dominated, some lower level of golf and just needed one chance at this level, and he took full advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, he was the PGA Tour America's Order of Merit winner, so top player on that tour, was going to be going to the Korn Ferry Tour, and then just decides to win this and gets to skip the Korn Ferry Tour altogether. So really cool, and that's, I think, that's one of the best things about golf is when you get stories like this. Like a guy kind of comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he gets to live out his dream.
Yep.
And seriously, go watch that guy swing a golf club. Talking with Harrison kind of off camera, I said he kind of reminded me a little bit of Jake Knapp, just with how smooth his swing is and just how far he hits the ball. And he kind of said almost like a Jake Knapp and Cam Young combination.
Yeah, just like effortless power.
Effortless power. Obviously only 23, so sky's the limit for him. We'll take a quick look at his what's in the bag just to kind of lay it out. Of course, you and Harrison will get much more into kind of the specific equipment here in a little bit, but starting off the top, driver, Titleist GT3, playing that with a Project X Hazardous Smoke Blue. Then he fairway, this is one we'll talk about here, Titleist GT1, and then he goes into his irons, very unique setup. He plays a Titleist T150 as his utility iron. Don't see that very often. And then his irons, T100 4-5 irons, 620 CB 6-9, so very players and blade-like clubs all the way out through his irons, then Vokey wedges and a Phantom 7.2 Scotty Cameron Tour prototype there.
Yeah, so, I'm very curious to get Harrison's thoughts on that utility iron build because that's something I've never seen before. Usually it's that, some sort of player's distance iron head. This is obviously a lot smaller, compact, so I'm curious to see what he thinks about that because that's something I don't think I've ever seen really in a what's in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's T250, U505, something in that where it's kind of that true, utility or true driving iron. And here it's literally, nope, here's just
not at all. You see a lot of these with
player's cavity with a hybrid shaft.
Yeah, you see a lot of T150s in the 5 or 6 iron or maybe 4 iron. but I haven't seen a 3-iron with a hybrid shaft before, so that's fascinating.
Yeah, it might be something we need to go build and try out ourselves.
Maybe it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then staying at the Bank of Utah Championship, Jason Day, who, of course, is an equipment free agent, so he kind of gets to go and play and test everything he wants. Ended up playing some Avoda prototypes. Of course, Avoda irons, that's, what Bryson DeChambeau played, made famous, and his, at the Masters and his U.S. Open win. He was playing their MB version, basically a similar version to Bryson, just not in the one length. If you go to Golf WRX, they have a great story just on, he kind of goes into depth of what he was looking for, wanted to try them out, how they went about it, because they're all 3D printed. They have that, bulge and roll face. So really interesting, but just to see, a guy who of that status kind of make this decision, and he kind of just decided he was kind of testing him against his MBs there, and just kind of made the decision to put him in this week, and seemed to like him.
It's always fascinating with these guys that are equipment free agents, some of the things that they try. And I think with Jason Day, he's been known to be very particular about this stuff. He's swapped out drivers a lot the last few years, irons as well. So, I don't know. I frankly don't know a ton about these Avoda irons and other than the bulge and roll face and some of the stuff that we've learned just through Bryson. But I don't know. Maybe it'll take off. Maybe more players will do it.
Yeah, we shall see. And then kind of wrapping up the turn here, Dustin Johnson kind of embracing his inner Kevin Kraft, let's say. Put his 6th different putter in play this year. Very Kraft-like.
Well, those are minor league numbers compared to Kevin from a couple years ago. And I think Kevin had, was it 12 or 14 or something in 1 year?
Yeah, right around
so, but yeah, I think, Dustin Johnson's another guy since his, I think TaylorMade contract had run out. He's another guy who's been really kind of tinkering and trying to find the right setup for him. A lot of different brands in the bag. So I think, and he's one guy that if he finds a setup and can find something with his game that harkens back to, his prime, he's certainly still a threat in both obviously on live, but also in these majors that he gets in the field for.
Yeah, and so he was playing the Scotty Cameron Phantom T5 this week. He had played different versions of the TaylorMade Spider, which he'd been playing for a long time. He also had a Lab in his bag there for a little bit, but playing with the Scotty Cameron Phantom T5, which he had played Scotty Cameron in years past. But obviously the Spider is the one he's probably the most famous for. I think he's won his majors with that. But just goes to show you, even the pros are sitting there tinkering with putters, trying to find that exact, match for their game. And I am the opposite of a putter tinker. I've been playing with the same putter for 18 years. And
I think there's two schools of thought. There's the player that goes out on weekends and they play golf, maybe once a week. And then if they play poorly, they're like, I got to get a new driver. Or if they putt poorly, got to get a new putter. Dustin Johnson falls into that category, and there's some like you who, they know that they'll have a certain putter that they like the setup of, and if they putt poorly a couple times, that's fine. They're going to keep running with it. So I respect that.
Yeah. So, that wraps up the turn, and that'll lead us right into a kind of our fitters breakdown into Michael Brennan's What's in the Bag. You sat down with Harrison earlier, just kind of broke down some key parts of the bag, right?
Yeah, it was good. Harrison, obviously, as you mentioned, he has a ton of good insight into this. Both has a really, really good player, and he can kind of relate in that regard to these players and Michael Brennan a little bit this week. So really good stuff here from Harrison. We now welcome in Harrison Arnold, Master Club Fitter, really good golfer, in to give some perspective on Michael Brennan's winning clubs at the Bank of Utah Championship, a name that not a ton of people probably were super aware of heading into this week, but had a ton of success on kind of lower level tours, got a sponsor's invite, and goes out and destroys everybody. So we'll start kind of towards the top. Titleist GT3 driver, Harrison. That's nothing surprising there. I'm sure you've fit a ton of those in the last year and a half or so. But where I wanted to start here is actually his 3-wood, Titleist GT1. I think you would assume a lot of GT2s and GT3s would be the 3-wood of choice from that series. Mm-hmm. But GT1 here, what do you think Michael has seen with that one to put it in the bag?
Yeah, so I think, like we were talking about, I think the first, he's put this club into the bag this week, right? So he's clearly got to this golf course, played a practice round, seen a situation out there where he's thought change was necessary. So GT1 going to be a much shallower head. This is their most forgiving model, so I think to start off, just definitely gives him a little bit more confidence looking behind the ball. But that thing's going to launch a little bit higher. It's going to spin a little bit more. So there's definitely a situation that he's seen this week where he's thought, maybe I need this club to help gap my bag a little bit better, especially the elevations are at this week. Ball was going for a long way. I think he had a couple drives that went over 400 yards this week, so definitely getting it out there, right? So I would assume there were some situations maybe coming into a par 5 that he thought, I'm going to need something that is going to launch a little bit higher and come down a little bit softer to help me score better on these par 5s, which clearly worked. Huh?
Yeah, clearly it worked. So I mean, any decision he made in here clearly worked for him this week. So yeah, GT1. It's kind of fascinating to go from GT3 in the driver, that kind of clearly a player's tour, so to speak, driver head, go to GT1, which I mean, it obviously can act like a tour head for a lot of players, but it's the higher MOI, bigger footprint, much shallower face. Then into the irons, which is where things get even more fun for me. A T150 utility iron, and that is not a typo or a mistake. He played a T150, which is kind of that player's cavity design from Titleist in their T series, but it becomes a utility iron with the Project X Hazardous Black 105 hybrid shaft in it. So he basically takes a what would be described to me as a player's cavity iron, pretty slim profile, and turns it into a utility iron. Have you seen something like this before, and why do you think Michael opted for it?
Yeah, so I think I haven't seen a lot of people get fit for these in the fitting base. You've got to be a pretty good ball striker to put a utility iron in as a T150, right? Seen it a lot in the bags of at high-level tournaments. I think there's a element of, yes, that thing's going to spin a little bit higher, and it's going to come down a little bit softer. But I think it's that look. I think it's the look of that slimmer profile. If you used to putting a club down and seeing blades, you're not going to want to see all of that gear behind the head.
Right, a big chunky club.
No, right. So I think that's one big thing. I think going to that T150 with a graphite has a shaft. I think it just gives him the workability. If he wants to hit something a little bit lower and get something to chase, he's got the ability to. But that graphite shaft's going to launch nice and high and give him enough stopping power into those greens.
Yeah, because I think the commonplace utility iron here would be something like a T200 or a T250 or U505, whatever it might be from Titleist. But with that said, he does transition from T150 in that 3 iron to T100 in the 4-5 iron, and then actually 620 CB from 6 through 9 iron. So I would say a pretty unique combo set there. A lot of times it's a muscleback blade to a T100, or maybe it's just T100 to T150.
Yeah.
But this is probably a combo. I don't know if you've seen this before. This is definitely I think a new one for me.
Yeah, I mean, in combo sets are extremely popular and getting more popular every year, right? Definitely makes a lot of sense to help gap the bag, give ourselves a little bit more forgiveness in the top end of the bag. But yeah, this is... It's barely even a combo set, right? It's all very bladed. I think if we're looking at Brennan's setup here, though, he's definitely looking for a little bit more precision in that bottom half of the bag, the real scoring clubs as well. I think that 4 and 5 irons in there just for that extra added forgiveness, which we're talking T100 and talking forgiveness, usually not in the same sentence, right? But so very interesting setup that he went and played this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are, I would say, pretty quote-unquote normal. A couple things GT3 driver, right? But I think the iron set is certainly an interesting combo there. You don't see a lot of 620 CB to T100. In the wedges, I would say this is where it's more quote-unquote normal or a more common setup. We goes Vokey SM10 and his 46, acting like kind of a pitching wedge almost for him. 50, 54, and then a kind of a custom wedge works, 60-degree or lob wedge. Into the putter now. And I know you had mentioned this before we started recording, that this was kind of something interesting. Scotty Cameron Phantom 7.2 tour prototype. And what makes it unique, especially here, is the neck. It's a welded plumber's neck there. So talk to me about that setup and maybe what he's liking about that and why he has it in the bag.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, firstly, that putter comes stock with a short slant net. So whenever you see something that's welded on the bottom, they've kind of done something very custom to it that's not a usual offering, right? So kind of stands out straight away. I think looking at different neck styles, it's very important to kind of get fit in a putter fitting for the neck style too. We always talk about head shape and how that can affect your aim, but I think neck's just equally as important, right? So there's 3 things we can really control in putting. It's our speed, it's how we read the greens, but the most important thing, and we look at in fittings, is how do we aim that putter? Because that's the one main thing we can control. So finding the right head shape is half the battle, but also finding the right neck type that he likes is also equally important. Because we're looking at how can I get this thing to perform exactly the same every single time. It's a game of imperfection, right?
Right, exactly. And I think one of the things that I wanted to add here too is I think in my time at Second Swing and what I've learned about putters is so often it's the neck type is associated with your stroke or the stroke type, right? I mean, if you have some, toe hang, maybe you need more of, your putting stroke has more arc to it, right? But this is a little different perspective where the neck type can actually be associated to how you set up the putter and your alignment with it.
For sure.
So do you often make a switch either yourself or with a golfer in a fitting, just the neck type based on how you align it?
Definitely. I think head shape kind of carries most of it. But if we're looking between a few different head shapes, and we found the right head shape, then I think my next step is going, okay, well, let's see what other neck styles is offered in this head shape. Let's see if there's a difference between a short slant neck or a gooseneck or a plumber's neck, whatever that it may offer in that thing, because we might find something that is just a little bit more consistent. A plumber's neck comes up and goes to the left on the right-handed putter. That alone is going to help you to set your hands a little bit more forward when you're setting up to the putt, right? So that alone kind of takes away that first move where you push your hands forward, and when we push our hands forward, face opens ever so slightly. So maybe for him, he doesn't like to have to remember or push his hands forward because of that reason. So the plumber's neck works great for him. Maybe those little short slant necks, he pushes his hand forward, sees there's a little bit of a right aim bias.
Yeah, interesting. That's something, again, I haven't thought of before, but another fascinating look, and that's why you're here, Harrison, to give those different perspectives for us.
That'll be good for something.
so Harrison, thank you for stopping in. Now it's an in-depth look at the clubs that were won on the PGA Tour this week by Michael Brennan. So that was Harrison Arnold talking about Michael Brennan's bag, and again, his really good thoughts from him. I thought especially kind of the GT1 piece on being that the ball's going a little farther, and the gapping discussion a little bit, and how his driver was going over 400 yards a few times. Like, it does play into then, well, what's the next club and how far can my 3 would go at that elevation? So there's a couple nuances there that maybe I didn't consider that he brought to the forefront.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed kind of his breakdown of, how the hosel, the plumber's neck, how it can impact aim, along with just, obviously you're fitting for a head and you're fitting for your stroke, but just how sometimes just having a little different neck there can help you aim your putts a little better, which is one of the most important parts of putting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Starting out on the right line. So
we have a couple of fitters in the company that are very focused on, if you're not aligning it right, then we're not even going to start the putter fitting. Yeah. So I know Andy Thompson's that way at the Minneapolis store. So
yeah, and then interestingly, Harrison also, he competed in college against Michael Brennan. Michael Brennan was at Wake Forest, and Harrison was at the University of Minnesota. So got to play against him head to head. So really cool to kind of hear him, break down. Obviously probably have seen Michael play in person, knowing the type of game he has to kind of give those insights into his equipment decisions. So
yeah, now another dose of Harrison Arnold with Jake talking about spin, and I think a lot of golfers, maybe the golfers that play a lot are really in tune with their equipment. They know the impact spin has, but I think there's a lot of golfers also there too that can learn a lot from this and how much the spin matters, and maybe it's the reason you aren't seeing the performance that you want. So a good discussion here between Jake and Harrison.
Hey golfers, I am joined by master club fitter Harrison Arnold from our Minneapolis location. Today we are going to talk about spin rates and kind of how they relate to each club in the bag during your fitting. So spin rate is obviously one of the things that we talk about the most with a customer. It's kind of starting with driver. What is like the ideal spin rate you're looking for someone to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends what you call optimal, right? I mean, we see a lot of these different charts. It really depends on how you're delivering the golf club. Depends on how much ball speed you have too. Someone who has a little bit less ball speed and they're hitting a couple of degrees down of it, that number is going to be very different to someone who's swinging very fast, getting a lot of ball speed, and swinging 4 or 5 degrees up. You're right. So, I think a good rule of thumb is somewhere kind of in that 2,500 range, right?
Yeah.
but very dependent on either side of what on what this individual's coming in for, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you how many golfers I've had that ask me, what should my spin rate be at? And it's a very loaded question because it is very dependent on how you are delivering that golf club. If someone is swinging up on the golf ball, their spin rate optimally is going to be a little bit lower because they're naturally going to launch it higher. If they are swinging down on it, they don't create a lot of height. You need that spin to actually keep the ball more airborne.
Yeah.
What are some tendencies that you've found that cause spin rate to be a little higher than you would like it to be?
I mean, first and foremost, anything that's coming out the heel, which usually comes from someone swinging quite across the golf ball.
Yep.
When you're swinging across the golf ball, you're also going to be you're going to naturally hit down on the golf ball too. So anyone who's kind of coming in and go, I've got a bit of a slice, I struggle with hitting the ball out the heel. Well, that's I'm going to have a pretty good guess that they're going to be a pretty high spin player. We're going to have to find a solution towards that, right?
Yeah. What are kind of some strategies that you use to address a high spin rate?
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, trying to get some weight into that heel side, that's going to make a huge difference. Just going to give it a little bit more mass behind that head. So when they do hit it in there, just kind of a bit more solid contact, a bit more ball speed. That's going to help to sort of neutralize some of that fade as well. Another thing, if they're hitting down on the golf ball, adding a little bit of loft is going to help them launch it in the right windows too. That alone is just going to get them to closer to optimal.
Yeah, absolutely. Then I would say, like, for myself, I can speak to this really well because this is how I swing. Not everyone needs to actually take spin down. I am one of the cases where I need more spin on my golf ball to actually keep it airborne. Spin is really what keeps the ball in the air. I mean, your launch angle is going to get it there, but your spin rate keeps it there, as I like to say. So making sure that we have the right spin rate to keep that ball airborne, carrying, and still allowing for good rollout is going to be just as important as bringing spin rate down.
Yeah.
Ping has a great chart that we kind of reference if you ever come in for a fitting with us. We'll show it to you. It all just kind of breaks down ball speed based on attack angle and just kind of what the optimal ranges are. And I mean, the launch angle on their range is anywhere from like 2.5 degrees all the way up to, I think, 14.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a wide range of optimal, and that's why you kind of come in and see one of us and really get working towards that optimal goal.
Yeah, and I think a big thing with driver spin as well, you got to kind of come in with a idea of what you're really looking for too, right? Yeah, we can come in and try and fit you into something that's optimal, right? But that might not mean it's going to be great for you on the golf course. Like, personally, I don't play an optimal spinning driver. I like to see spin be 300 or 400 higher than optimal, so that if I hit it into the right side of the fairway, when I've mishit it, it has half a chance of sticking in that fairway. Just because a bit more spin on there to kind of like keep me in play a bit more. Vice versa, rough to the trees, which is more often than not, right? But
100%.
But same idea. If you're going to hit a bit of a draw, a little bit of hook, that extra bit of spin is just going to keep that ball in the air, gives you a little bit more control.
Yeah, and then kind of moving into the irons, spin rate there is going to be completely different. With a driver, more often than not, we're working to take spin off. With an iron, we're actually trying to add spin.
Yeah.
The reason for that is we're really trying to achieve descent angle and just more stopping power, really. Where would you say the optimal range for most golfers, let's say swinging in the 70 to 80 mile an hour range, is going to be for spin rate and land angle?
Yeah, I think land angle, I think that magic number is 45 and up, right? I think if we can get you to 45, anything on top of that is just kind of cherry on top of the cake, right?
Yep.
Spin, so anywhere kind of that 5,500, 6,500, good rule of thumb, depending on how they're launching it, how much land are they getting, I think that's a good sort of baseline to start with.
Yeah, and I mean, as you see these days, like, iron lofts are getting a lot stronger. And what happens with that a lot of times is we kind of lose spin, we lose peak height, we lose stopping power. That can also kind of get into where people are starting to see a lot more flyers now, where they catch something with a little bit of grass in between the ball and all of a sudden it's 15 yards longer. So I, over the years, have kind of developed a tendency to definitely lean players towards a higher spin model. It gives them a bit more of what I call a spin reservoir, where if we do drop spin, it's not going from 4,000 to 3,000, it's going from 5,000 to 4,000.
Yeah, sure.
So we're controlling distance a lot better. We're still seeing height. We're still seeing land angle and stopping power, but we're not focusing so much purely on just distance.
Yeah, and I think distance looks really great on paper, right? You come into a fit and you go, oh, so you've gained 25 extra yards.
Yeah.
But if we're sacrificing land angle and sacrificing spin, well, that's not going to help us on the golf course to actually bring our scores down, right?
No, not at all. And that's why, again, I just getting a lot more players out of a 4-iron, even a 5-iron, into a hybrid, just because it does spin and launch a lot better. It also has a little more ball speed, which doesn't hurt. But yeah, I mean, if I had one number on TrackMan, honestly, that I could use to fit a player, I think it would be spin. Just because the spin rate's in the right spot, typically we're going to have pretty good results.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's very interesting kind of in the fitting bay, seeing how, trying to fit someone into those longer irons, filling in those gaps and seeing, we've not touched anything past 37 degrees of land angle with a 5-iron.
Yep.
But as soon as you put that higher in the bag, we're well above into the 42, 43s, spins in a good window. It's like just crazy to kind of see how just changing the sort of head shape is going to be able to help them too.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of getting into the bottom portion of the bag, when it comes to wedges, I'm not typically basing wedge fitting off of just which one spins the most. What I'm really looking for across the board with the wedge is just consistency. Yeah. I want to make sure that when you full swing that, it's going to run back 4 yards or it's going to roll out 2 feet. I just want it to be the same pattern every time and be predictable. Because as a high-level player yourself, you know how important spin control is.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things you got to kind of really think about when you're coming in for those fittings, right? And go, okay, am I struggling with spin, or am I struggling with it being consistent? Because if you're pitching in if you can pitch in a pretty good window every single time, well, okay, then the next idea is, okay, if I'm going to play a medium turf condition golf course, pretty soft, and then the next week we're playing soft greens, okay, do I actually have too much spin on this golf ball round? And kind of adapting from there. Because the worst thing is when you hit it, pitch it on a great number, and then it spins back 20 feet. Well, you haven't actually done anything wrong.
Yeah.
We haven't got the right setup for this
Absolutely.
course.
No, I think this has been a great conversation on spin. Golfers, if you want to come in and get your spin rates dialed in with a fitter like myself or Harrison, stop into one of our many locations. If you want to work with someone online, there are also online fitters available.
That was Jake Montgomery, Harrison Arnold, talking spin. I don't even know where to start in terms of all the information that is kind of offloaded between those two in that segment, but spin matters. And I think that's the main takeaway here is pay attention to your spin and what you're generating with all your clubs in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, everyone always wants to know what's an ideal spin number, and that's kind of can't really answer that question just because everyone's swing is different, and I think they made a great point. It's how you deliver the ball. At what angle are you coming down on the ball or up on the ball? At what speed are you coming through? What path are you coming on? There's so many different factors that impact spin, but just hearing how they their process of when they see a player that, if their irons aren't spinning enough, all right, well, what do we need to do? And they talked about how sometimes just adding some loft can help you get into that optimal spin window. So really interesting stuff. Really enjoyed these segments of kind of letting the fitters just, almost talk shop.
Yep.
Hope to have many more of them. Hopefully you guys are all enjoying them. Let us know if there's any specific, topics you'd like them to discuss. We'd be happy to have them sit down and chat it out. But very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, the best part, I think, with these fitters is they've done so many fittings is that you could go to them, present a scenario. It's like, hey, I've got a golfer who is, they don't generate any spin, and they're, here's the numbers of the 7-iron, here's the numbers of the driver. How would you help this person? And they know right away the 3, 4, or 5 steps that they would take to help that player get more spin, get the landing angle in a certain spot. Like they have it all right there. It's top of mind. So that stuff's a lot of fun, and we'll do, as you said, we'll do a lot more of those. So moving on to YouTube stuff, right? We got a ton of fun stuff on the YouTube channel coming. We just released today, actually, a fun comparison with Emma Carpenter as we're recording this. GT2 driver versus the TS2, which was kind of the first one in the Titleist Speed project. First one in the GT project, so to speak, for Titleist. So kind of a fun, 7 or 8 year comparison of Titleist performance. A bunch of more fun, unique stuff on the YouTube channel coming as well. And then, of course, we're getting into that part of the time of year as well. New products, potentially, for 2026 that we are working on in the background, too.
Yeah, absolutely. We also got Sam Udovich coming back on the channel.
Yeah,
to hear,
that's going to be fun.
Him and Tyler sit down and break down kind of his equipment and why he got put into it.
By the way, Sam Udovich, Junior Golfer of the Year for the Minnesota Golf Association.
That's right. So, and then we had
two-time winner of that now.
And we had Jake Olson as well, another second swing ambassador who was South Dakota player.
Yeah, and then Sam, I saw, just shot a 65 at the at TCU's event. I think they played this past weekend. So the guys, we knew this already about Sam trending up, but he's got a bunch of game.
Yeah, so we got him in there. We got more with him coming up. And on the second swing side, We do have a special trade bonus going on. It's limited time. Head to our website. It'll have more information there for you, but get a little trade bonus at the end of the season. And then make sure you check out our Second Swing fall golf specials. Lots of good items there going for unbeatable prices, so make sure you check that out.
Yeah, this is as we always say, right? We're gonna keep rolling this thing through with the podcast. We got a few tweaks in the works potentially later on, but we'll be here every single week. So you have to subscribe. You have to subscribe on YouTube and subscribe wherever you're listening. And we'll see you next week on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast.